I think there's this moment in wine now where people are being more honest with themselves. And I mean, my attitude's always been I want to go make the wines I believe in and I want to consume, and then I'm going to go find my audience. I'm not going to make wine for an audience. For me, it's more about a job well done.
Hey, this is Harman Skurnick, and welcome to another episode of Skurnick Unfiltered, where we peel back the layers and get behind the scenes of our favorite wineries and winemakers and find out what makes them tick. And today, we're going to listen in on an interview with Justin Willett, the proprietor of three brands, actually, Tyler, Adripa, and Yudi. And I have with me Jamie Schwartz, who is the ambassador and specialist in all things American wine for Skurnick. Welcome, Jamie.
Hey, Harman.
So you sat down with Justin. I find him to be one of the most interesting, intelligent, and forward-thinking winemakers I've ever met. What do you think?
I couldn't agree more. He's super passionate. He loves his craft. He maybe loves skiing and his kids a little more, but that's it.
Good for him.
Yeah. But, Justin is truly a craftsman and an artist, and I think that really comes through in our episode.
Totally. And he now has three brands. Tyler was the original one, based in the Santa Rita Hills. And then he started Yudi, which is the French word for vineyard place. And that's dedicated to the Loire varietals mostly. And then later on, he created another brand called Adripa, which is Cabernet and Merlot based, as a homage to his dad or something like that?
Exactly right. The origins of that label do begin as making Cabernet under the Tyler label. After Justin's father had passed, it was his favorite grape. But at a certain point, Justin recognized how successful Cabernet grows in the eastern part of Santa Ynez. And so he's really betting on that and has decided to make Cabernet a focus for this new label.
It's kind of counterintuitive. When you think of Santa Barbara, you don't think of Cabernet or Merlot. But if you go east to Happy Canyon, it actually is really great terroir for red wine there, isn't it?
Exactly right. And, he's actually gone from being a negociant to now an estate holder. And that's not just with Chardonnay Pinot Noir for the Tyler label, but also Adripa does have an estate vineyard out in Happy Canyon too. So not only is he an incredibly talented winemaker, but he has really gotten into the vineyard development and farming side of things too.
I didn't realize that he had vineyards out there as well. I know that he has his own vineyards in Santa Rita Hills, and he also recently purchased the Fiddlestix Vineyard,
Exactly
which is
right.
quite a famous vineyard. His style of wine is, in my mind, very European style. He's spent a lot of time in Burgundy. He's got a lot of friends in Burgundy. And I think the cool climate of Santa Rita Hills really helps him achieve that, don't you think?
I couldn't agree more. And we see these beautiful, energetic, high-acid wines that are a hallmark of our U.S. portfolio in general. And Justin's wines are very much a part of that.
Well, I started this session by saying I think he's one of the most thoughtful and intelligent people I know in this business. And so why don't we listen into your interview with him and see if everybody agrees?
I hope so. Here we go.
Let's go.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jamie Schwartz, U.S. Portfolio Manager here at Skurnick Wines. I'm joined by my friend Justin Willett, who's visiting us from Santa Barbara. As many of you know, Justin is responsible for the Tyler wines, Adripa, as well as Yudi. Justin, you're from the Santa Barbara area, and it's an amazing place to grow grapes. Can you just take us through the beginnings of your winemaking career and how you found your way into making basically every possible wine imaginable in Santa Ynez and in your home turf? There's a lot to cover, but let's start at the beginning.
Man, the beginning. Okay, so started making wine in 2005, really came from restaurants. My background, though, was in art history and architecture. Wine wasn't in the family at all. I mean, my dad was a contractor, my mom was a nurse. There's no real multi-generational wine people in Santa Barbara. We've only got 50 years of wine growing tradition today. I really just got the bug waiting tables in college, and soon thereafter decided that I didn't want to go to grad school and instead just wanted to make wine, but thought I had to go to school. Thought I had to go take OChem and microbiome and all these things. And so figured I should just go get dirty first, make sure I really wanted to do it. So waited tables at night and apprenticed during the day, and kind of started the end of 2004. And Joe Davis from Arcadian, who I was working for, pulled me aside before the 2005 vintage and just said, you really get this, and you're not going to learn faster than if you just put your dollars in the middle and make a little of your own wine. you'll actually have to think for yourself. And so I did, not at all thinking I was starting a wine brand, and instead just thinking this is just a step along the journey of really learning how to do this. And turns out a barrel of wine's 24 9-liter cases of wine, a lot more than you're going to drink with your buddies. So very quickly it became like not a need to start a brand, but the wines turned out well. And so Tyler was born. Tyler's always been like really a focus on Pinot Noir and Chardonnay. Then maybe 6 years later, started Ludi, which focuses on Loire varieties. So the Sauvignon Blanc and Chenin Blanc, Cabernet Franc, grapes originally from the Loire Valley, but grown in the Santa Ynez Valley. And then today also focusing with Adripa on the Bordeaux set of varieties. So growing from the eastern end of the Santa Ynez Valley. So yeah, that's what we're doing today.
Yeah. I love that you highlighted the bookends of Santa Ynez in that to the west in the Santa Rita Hills, we have the Burgundian varieties, and then we get into Bordeaux varieties on the eastern side of the valley. But like, what's that drive like? Like, my understanding from being there, how close in proximity everything is, but can you give us a lay of the land?
Sure. So the town of Santa Barbara is basically at the top of what would be considered Southern California. I kind of feel like as you work just up past Santa Barbara, you really begin the central coast of California. So Santa Barbara as a town is about an hour and a half's drive up the coast from Los Angeles. And then as you drive another 45 minutes or so up the coast and turn just inland, you find the Santa Ynez Valley, and that's really the wine country that people are referring to when they're talking about Santa Barbara. There's valleys up above that, the Los Alamos and Santa Maria Valley, but really the lion's share of what's happening is the Santa Ynez Valley. Right here, you have this kind of unique character of the mountain ranges kind of rotating 90 degrees from what's normal on the western seaboard, which typically is a north-south orientation. Because of the south-facing coastline of Santa Barbara, things rotate 90 degrees and work east-west. So we have what we call a transverse mountain range, which really allows for the strong onshore flow coming off the Pacific Ocean. I do know wherever you'll find a transverse mountain range in a Mediterranean climate, you're going to find wine grapes. Right where we are also is where the coastline kind of corrects from that south-facing coastline to a more west-facing coastline. So you kind of have almost like this right angle, or kind of looks like a nose on the map. That's called Point Conception. And right there is where basically the warm coming up from Mexico is colliding with all the cold coming down from Alaska. So the result is very severe weather patterns, a lot of wind, a lot of fog. So though we're further south than what a lot of people think of as California wine growing regions, we're actually the coldest region in California. There's like this just open mouth to the Pacific that's just like pretty intensely windy and cold. But within this valley, because it's so close to the coast and because we have the coast on two sides of us, as you work inland, you gain temperature quite quickly. Like a nice sunny day, the summertime temperature might be 75 or 80 degrees out in the Santa Rita Hills. But just as it's kind of hitting those peak temperatures, the wind's picking up off the coast and fog and breeze are kind of pushing back in and really cooling that off quickly. And while that's happening, you drive just 20, 30 minutes inland and you find Happy Canyon where it's over 95 degrees. So this really allows for us to grow a lot of different varieties. And like I was saying earlier, it's a blessing and a curse. It's hard to really define what is or isn't Santa Barbara, because with these really unique marine sedimentary soils and varying degrees of temperature based on where you are, you can kind of grow whatever you want. Whether it's the Pinot Noir and Chardonnay out to the west, or Rhone varieties kind of in the middle, say Ballard Canyon zone, plus or minus east and west of there. And then as you work further inland, I mean, the Loire set, the Rhone set, the Bordeaux set, whatever, all grow quite well. But I can't think of anywhere else on the West Coast that's got anything in the same way.
Yeah, I mean, it's an incredibly diverse area. You've done a lot of vineyard development in the course of your 20 years as a winemaker, and a lot recently. You have several estate vineyards now. You began as a negociant and now you're an estate holder. What's that transition like? How cool is it to develop a vineyard? Like, let's just dive into that stuff. I have a sense that really gets you going.
It's the best. I mean, every young winemaker hopes and yearns to be able to be in a position to plant their own grapes and then to be able to control them. I mean, that's really why we talk so much about buying grapes versus estate situations, is that it's a control thing.
We were speaking earlier about what's growing in California at large, and we're seeing new varieties pop up regularly. And you just touched on like the Mediterranean climate. We're seeing Italian varieties and things like that crop up more and more on the West Coast. Would you dare speculate, as someone who handles so many different grape varieties in the region, like what do you think is going to happen?
None of us have a crystal ball, so it's hard to really say. I mean, I know that a lot of places where it is getting much warmer, there's a lot more experimentation with varieties that are indigenously grown in really warm climates, just as a way to kind of hedge against whatever might be coming. But as much as it is different varieties, it's also different rootstocks, planting densities, row orientation, access to water, et cetera. Like there's a lot of different factors that really dictate what's going to be planted. The process starts with trying to understand your soils and what historically works well in that region. And then assuming you want to plant the traditional varieties, which I did. I mean, the Santa Ynez Hills is a fantastic place to grow Pinot Noir and Chardonnay. So that's really what we focus on. Back in 2005, my wife and I were able to acquire our first state vineyard, which is called Mae today. That was just an open field. But then it's really understanding vigor and soil complexities and then trying to decide on rootstock decisions and then even within Pinot Noir or Chardonnay, like the specific selections that we're really going to plant. The vine densities that we're planting at are, or at least at Mae, we planted kind of a roughly half of Burgundy density, effectively 2 meters by 1 meter. So that gets you about 5,000 vines per hectare or a little over 2,000 vines per acre. Burgundy is planted at 10,000 vines per hectare. The reason we do it this way is just because, frankly, we use different kinds of tractors and it's what works for us. I mean, that's I think, one of the things that is kind of lost, I think, as you go to market is that it's not like a one size fits all when it comes to farming and wine growing. So if we're talking about cultivation versus no cultivation in the vineyard, or we're talking about planting densities or what rootstocks or selections to plant, I mean, that's all specific to a place. And I think it's far more important to really be objective about what we're trying to do and looking carefully at the equation in front of you and really kind of trying to like play your best hand opposed to just doing what you heard works well somewhere else. I think a lot of also what is or isn't going to be planted has to do with the economics, unfortunately. I mean, you look at what it was to plant a vineyard, install that trellis, that infrastructure a generation ago or two versus what it costs today. I mean, both looking at the cost of steel, the cost of labor, diesel, et cetera. I mean, it's unfortunate in a way because a lot of these more esoteric varieties, when people do the math on like what that esoteric variety is going to return in the market, the math equation is going to say plant Cabernet.
Yeah. No.
Or plant Pinot Noir or whatever it is, because growing some random white variety where you're only going to be able to charge $25-$30 a bottle for it is just not going to pencil.
It's a really good point.
Which is a bummer.
I mean, cost of goods and all of those things. I mean, this is a business at the end of the day. So like, I guess we do have to.
Wouldn't it be cool if it wasn't?
I mean,
what if we just got to make wine and hearing stories and finding out what's worked and what doesn't? I mean, Sanford and Benedict, the first vineyard planted that's really iconic. I mean, that was planted all kinds of random stuff. I mean, Riesling and Cabernet and Merlot, and today it's Pinot Noir and Chardonnay. Pretty much that's it.
Is there anything else?
Nope. I think there's maybe a tiny bit of Viognier, maybe. But
I mean, we're talking
trace
40 plus years at this point that it's been
50.
those two varieties.
Yeah, probably. I'd say probably the last of some of the random stuff was probably removed in the last 10 years. But Cabernet, Merlot, Riesling, I think all that stuff's been out of there for quite some time. And again, it's just like because Pinot Noir and Chardonnay were the most marketable varieties, because they were the most successful. You know, no different than how Napa is really like, we know it as equaling Cabernet or, you know.
My sense of the wine world, especially like when we think about the wines of Europe and when it is generational and handed down and things of that nature, is things are sort of word of mouth or how it was done by the generation ahead of you. So like we don't have wine law here. And like, you know, you said earlier that you appreciate the creative freedom you're able to have by being a winemaker in California and not being hamstrung by like tradition and wine law as a result. But then I guess we are seeing the natural selection to a degree as well, that a region can be synonymous with a grape or a few select grapes. It's interesting, and yet there are more grape varieties that the average consumer is aware of, and like we are seeing people experiment with different things. You have some experimental plantings as well, and you've got some alternate varieties going. What's going on there?
I think the opportunity, and I think it's a very American perspective, to just not have to be tied to tradition in these ways. But maybe a century or two from now, we've kind of just all agreed that certain things work better than others. I mean, it didn't happen overnight in Europe, and we're still really young. But I think the opportunity to really explore and see what works or doesn't is a uniquely American thing in a lot of ways. I mean, when it comes to wine, at least, I can plan out whatever densities I want. I can plan this way or that way, and this clone or that variety, and I love doing that. So out at like Mae, I mean, that's predominantly Pinot Noir and Chardonnay, though we've done a little messal of meter by meter, cross-staked, own-rooted Syrah. I mean, not at all how most things are planted today. I mean, it's what you find in the Northern Rhone as far as like the way it looks, the little A-frames out there. And not only do I think it looks cool, it makes some really interesting wine. So, but it's been really slow to establish. I thought the vineyard would grow much better, much faster. Turns out when you just slam sticks into the ground and, it's a slower go. And we're still figuring it out, I mean, I said earlier today, like it takes, I'd say 5 to 7 years to really see the full ramifications of your decisions in wine. Just by the time you commit to something, start something, produce the wines, get them in the market. I would say just now this year, this is the first year that I've really seen that vineyard really pop and have like a uniform bud break that looks like, okay, this is like an established vineyard finally now nearly 10 years into that planting. So fingers crossed it actually makes some nice wine. But there's only one way to learn that, and that's by doing it.
So we've just talked about Mae Estate and that there wasn't a history of growing grapes on the property before you took it over, but you've also recently acquired an established vineyard, Fiddlestix. What's the difference when you're working with a blank canvas versus coming in and taking over someone else's vision?
I think inheriting that history from Kathy Joseph, who planted the vineyard originally and was the custodian of it for the first nearly 30 years. I think there's something that feels like passing of the torch, you might call it. I mean, you just think about all the time and energy that she and all the others out there have spent over the years. And so to inherit a vineyard that's in such a wonderful part of the Santa Rita Hills, but also in such great shape with such healthy vines, it's a privilege and an honor. And it's cool to think that Eric Malaya, my partner and vineyard manager in our farming company and in Fiddlestix, along with Bill, our other partner there, I mean, it's just really cool to think about now us for the foreseeable future really being the ones to try to push this place forward and improve it how we can and hopefully use it as a platform to help really push the Santa Rita Hills. I mean, Fiddlestix has been a long-standing, high-quality vineyard source for a lot of producers, and it's cool to also now be in this position to where I can help direct the farming of fruit that's going to go into a lot of other people's programs, which is a unique position that I've never found myself in before, right? Like, I mean, I was the one on the other side of the table, like trying to buy a ton or two of fruit from Sanford and Benedict or La Rinconada or Biennacido or wherever. But today, to really be the one selling fruit to effectively competitors is a unique position, but it's something that I relish, and I think it's really cool to be part of the community in that way.
Is Mae Estate also going to be something that could turn into a vineyard source for other people, or is that? I mean, it's a smaller site.
It's smaller. It's not small, but no. I mean, that feels personal in a different way, right? Like, I mean, planning it from scratch. We redid the house out there. We brought kids home from the hospital there. I mean, that's home in a lot of ways, and so that is really like the core of Tyler today, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, it's obviously a privilege to then also be able to say that Fiddlestix is at that same level. But I think because of the history there with Kathy, the size of it, the fact that there's been this long-standing tradition of selling fruit there, it does feel different.
Justin, we've talked a lot about Tyler, of course, and the great plantings of Burgundian varieties on the western edge of Santa Ynez, but you've really started diving into the eastern part of the appellation, getting into Cabernet. Can you tell us about Ad Ripa and where that began, what's in store?
Sure. I guess my journey with Bordeaux varieties really starts with Loire varieties, starting to work with the Ludi wines, which I started in 2011, focusing on all these Loire varieties grown out in Happy Canyon. So the vast majority of what we work with there is all grown out in this kind of the eastern reaches of the Santa Ynez Valley. So it's about a 20, 30-minute drive out from the Santa Rita Hills, working due east. As you get out there, turns out Cabernet, Cabernet Franc, Chenin Blanc, Sauvignon Blanc all grow really great. You've got these soils that are this really interesting kind of kitchen sink of marine subsoil, clay loam topsoils, all this river cobble, volcanic material, serpentine material, really kind of random group, but the results are some really fresh, very interesting wines. And so first working with Cab Franc for Ludi, I mean, that really transitioned into helping my wife's family with their estate winery. Their winemaker got sick back in 2012, so helped them make a few vintages there. And in the process, I was just like, oh man, like these Cabernets are killer. Like I don't get why the wines I was having from out that way just didn't really do it for me. I think a lot of it had to do with people just kind of picking hyper ripe fruit and stuff out of balance. And the wines, while maybe ripe alcoholically, always felt hollow and kind of disjointed. So didn't think much of it for a few years. And then my dad passed away in 2016. And the day he passed, I happened to be at the top of this block in this vineyard meeting, and just below me was this really beautiful block of head-trained To Kalon clone Cabernet Sauvignon. And, you know, my dad wasn't a big wine guy, but when he drank wine, he liked Cabernet. And so thought maybe do a little homage for him. So I started making a little bit of Cabernet under Tyler in 2016, focusing on that head-trained To Kalon stuff. That made these really lovely, very classically styled Cabernets, and kind of just started going with that. Had a lot of success, had a lot of nice scores, all that. But, you know, in 2020, I started thinking to myself, like, you know, these wines are really good, and I don't want these just to be the other thing that Tyler does. Because at a certain point, you got to kind of define a brand. And so to better give these wines a real platform and voice, I decided to start Ad Ripa. Really, with the 21 vintage, we start this new label. Ad Ripa means to the shore. So really talking about this coastal river valley with the ocean on two sides of us, where the Santa Ynez and the ocean both impact the style of Cabernet, which I would define as far more restrained, certainly powerful, deep, rich, impressive wine, but with a level of freshness and balance that you don't find in a lot of places, that maybe feels a little bit more old school, old world in size and shape. So that's how we go. So we make a couple different wines now from a younger planting called China Blue that I control. It's about a 10-acre vineyard today, planted mostly to Cabernet Sauvignon and a bit of Cab Franc. There's also a little bit of Sauvignon Blanc out there as well. And then working with this old head train stuff right next door at Happy Canyon Vineyard, which is the original planting out there in the Santa Rita Hills.
And sorry, that's 90s?
90s planting. Originally, it was planted to a lot of Rhone varieties, but kind of turns out it's too warm for those to really do well. So the Bordeaux set's been really successful out there, and I'm really excited about the project. This was about making wines in these styles of these old California wines that I'd had that were really good. And, you know, I've had the good fortune of trying a lot of wine from the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, early 90s from Santa Cruz or Napa or wherever that are fantastic. Then this era happens where, you know, there's economic benefit to really appeasing certain critics. And so the style changes to best position a brand to do well. And I get it. But those just aren't the wines I want to drink. And so I think there's this moment in wine now where it's like people are being more honest with themselves. And my attitude's always been, I want to go make the wines I believe in and I want to consume, and then I'm going to go find my audience. I'm not going to make wine for an audience.
I'm just wondering about perfection in the sense of we've just talked about inheriting a vineyard versus the blank canvas and planting of one. Is there a perfect vineyard? Is there a perfect wine? Like, how does that come into your vision and your process?
I don't think there's a perfect vineyard site. There's not one that is the one. I think there's like this really cool combination of soil and climate, the planting itself, but then also the hands that are involved. And I think that's really the cool part, right? Like, I mean, I could sit here, hand you the exact same fruit, write down the recipe. Okay, go do it. And you're going to make a different wine. And so I think there's all of these, call them X factor, call them intuition, whatever. I mean, that is what's so personal about winemaking. That's why we talk about the generational changes in these iconic regions. It's because when someone passes the torch, I mean, the same vineyard, same shop, same cellar, whatever, the wines are gonna change one way or another. So no, I don't think wines can be perfect. I don't think vineyards are perfect. I mean, I certainly strive for perfection in the wines that I make, but it's like, who am I to say if my wine's perfect or not? For me, it's more about like a job well done, right? Like it's about getting up, going and doing the work, doing the hard stuff, doing the stuff other people talk about doing, but actually doing it. It's about the early mornings and the late nights and your hands hurting and then going home and tucking the kids in and going back to the cellar and doing it some more. I mean, that's winemaking, and that's the part that's so amazing about the process. It's the collaboration. It's the time spent with crews of migrant labor that are helping us do this process. I mean, so much of it's talking about like a winemaker, but it's like, I'm one guy. I can't do everything. I've got a team in the cellar. They respect my aesthetic and hopes and goals for how we're going to do it. And they're proud of the end product, but it takes a village. It does. I mean, it's a lot of work making wine. The part that's perfect for me is every year in harvest, there's this moment where the interns are up to speed and everything's kind of just flowing, and I can look around and everyone's doing what they need to be doing, and the fruit looks great coming in, and fermentation smell great, and you're like, yeah, like this is why I do this. This is as perfect as it gets for me. And it's just super rewarding. I mean, now 20 years in, I mean, really having this moment to not only do the work, but also teach and share. And like, if those around me are just there to clean up, it's going to get real boring. So it needs to be me about passing on what I've learned at this point, just like those early conversations with Jim Clendenin or Richard Sanford.
The flow, that like peak harvest flow you were just talking about, I recognize that's something that I've experienced in my time working in restaurants, and it wasn't just at fancy ones. It was like at bars early on in my career too. But like, I think you hear musicians talk about that, artists talk about that. It comes in different fields, but like we're dealing with human elements and a collaboration of people. And I just think that is such a special thing when that flow locks in. So I'm glad you brought it up, and I'm glad you get to experience it. And it's something that I maybe miss now. Is there anything else that you want to touch on today? Is there anything that we've missed? I mean, we had a beautiful bottle of your sparkling wine earlier. I think there's some Gruner hiding in one of your vineyards too. Like there's a lot of things to, a lot of rocks to still overturn, but any last thoughts on your end?
This has been such a wonderful journey thus far. And, honestly, I just hope you go buy my wine because I'm totally unemployable at this point.
Well, you're Justin Willett. You're unemployable, but you make amazing wines. Long career ahead of you, new estate vineyards, legacy vineyards with some new vision and energy. I mean, it's a really exciting time. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it was really fun.
Cool.
Skurnik Unfiltered is recorded at Skurnik Wines and Spirits headquarters in the Flatiron District of New York City. If you found the conversation interesting, please consider liking, subscribing, and leaving a review. You can stay up to date on our show and upcoming events by following Skurnik Wines on Instagram and visiting our website at skurnik.com.